gentlemen, we are going to have to make room for the next show pretty soon. We've got time for one more question, so let's do one more question.
Has any presidential candidate taken a stand on this?
Clarify some things.
The question right here, though, was, has any presidential candidate taken a stand on this? I mean, I think we all are aware that Donald Trump, addressed this issue during one of the debates. I think what's interesting about it is when the question was posed to him by CNN, which is sponsored by...
Hold your hear the question.
The first question was right down here, and we can go to the other question. But what I think is interesting is...
What was the question?
Oh,
what was it?
The question is, has a presidential candidate addressed this issue of vaccines and autism? The only candidate I know of is Donald Trump, but he also was supported in many ways by Rand Paul and Ben Carson, who both said in that same debate, though there's been many studies proving no connection, both Rand Paul and Ben Carson doctors said there's a growing belief amongst pediatricians that we're giving too many vaccines, too much vaccines all at one time, and a lot of people in this country are getting really tired of having the government decide what's best for their own children.
Okay, let's go back to one question here, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sorry, quickly, what actually is the flaw in the study? I missed it in the movie, is that they changed the numbers in what way? That's the first question. So I can tell somebody what the flaw in the study is. And the second question is, are we seriously in this room, all these people, and the million people out there that have autistic children, dealing with a situation where the pharmaceutical industry insists that you get 3 vaccines at once at a young age, and that the world would come to an end if we waited until the kid was 4 or 5 and then gave them 1 vaccine at a time? That's what they're resisting? And why?
Just to handle the first question, the flaw in the DiStefano study is specifically, and there are several marked flaws, but the specific flaw around the African American cohort is that when they ran the entire sample, they saw an effect. They saw a very, very strong effect in African Americans that received the MMR vaccine on time versus those African Americans that received the MMR after 36 months of age. They subsequently saw an even stronger effect when they looked at African American males alone. They did not like that particular result, so they decided that they would kick individuals out of the study if they did not have a valid state of Georgia birth certificate. This was a study that looked specifically at individuals in metropolitan Atlanta. And what they found was when they kicked out the individuals that did not have a valid state of Georgia birth certificate, that they were able to reduce the statistical power of the sample. The sample became much smaller. It actually decreased its size by 40%. And although there was a positive risk, it was no longer statistically significant. And the way that they did that, the way that they made the relationship go away, and anybody that knows statistics and epidemiology, if you have a smaller sample size, then you lose statistical power. Numbers, large numbers, give you more statistical power. So these CDC scientists knew that if they got a smaller sample size, that they could basically ignore any type of result as being not statistically significant. That's the first part. Anybody want to handle
The second part is they did something very similar with isolated autism, the children who were developmentally normal to 12 months of age, and then they decided to actually destroy the data so that there was no record that anyone could go back to check on those facts.
And you want to know, what was the motivation? You want to talk about the patent or the ownership of MMR versus single measles, mumps, rubella.
What is the motivation? What is the motivation for not? Okay, when this all happened, when this data came to light, the CDC had 2 choices. They had many choices, but the first choice they had was to say, right, we will now, in the interests of children, with an abundance of caution, we will delay the vaccine, just as you suggested, till after 3 years of age, particularly in these high-risk groups, until this is resolved scientifically. At the same time, we will conduct a bigger, larger study, a better study to determine whether we can replicate this finding in another population. They did neither of those two things that they should have done. What they did was to cheat and throw out the data. That's number one. Number two is, why do we not want to go back to single measles vaccines? Why would a company like Merck that makes the MMR withdraw the option of single measles vaccines unilaterally? Not a government decision. Merck made the decision to deprive parents in this country of the single vaccines by making MMR the only vaccine available. Why would they do that? It's a very interesting question that's currently under discussion and certainly being looked at in the courts. It came to light that Merck held the patent for the mumps vaccine. They were the only company in this country to have that. And they tried to prevail upon the CDC to introduce a mumps vaccine. And the CDC, just as the English health authority, said, no, we don't need a mumps vaccine. It's a trivial disease. And it doesn't cost us anything. It's relatively harmless. We have no need for a mumps vaccine. And Merck, Maurice Hilleman, went state by state persuading state health officials to introduce the mumps vaccine, until it got to the point where the CDC said, everybody's using it, so to hell with it. To hell with it. We might as well have a mumps vaccine. Merck then got the combined vaccine patent and cleaned up with a monopoly. That is the basis of the science on which mandatory mumps vaccination was introduced into this country, on an oh to hell with it call by the CDC. That is another insider's information. So it really comes down to a commercial imperative on behalf of the major pharmaceutical industry to create a monopoly, in my opinion.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we do need to make room for the next audience. And I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. I want to thank Brian, and Polly, and Dale, and Jamie for being here and you guys can tell the story and aware of all the secrets. Thank you, everybody. Move us to the lobby, and our panelists will be out there to talk with you more if you'd like to ask them more questions. Thank you very much.
Right, we're left-handed. Oh, I like river. Thank you.